boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen around the world. It is once again time for your writers, actors, directors podcast, the WADcast. This is episode number 56, and I am one of your hosts, Josh, with a guy that spends more time in jail than... I don't know, who gets thrown in jail a lot these days?
I don't know.
Well, then someone that gets thrown in jail a lot. It's Brandon. What's up, sir?
Yeah, what's up? Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. Yeah, so the WADcast is currently working on a press release that is going to be seen by nobody. But and I have an apology video. But long story short, for those of you that do not know, I am currently once again on a 30-day ban from Facebook for commenting on a video posted by a buddy of mine online in which someone was being chased around by a little guy dressed up as Chucky. This guy's whipping at Chucky with like a belt, and Chucky's following up the stairs, holding a real knife in his hand too, might I add. And I simply suggested that whipping him is not going to do any good, and he should just punt a little, like, and I quote, this will be my one for the show, I'm just going to get it out the way earlier. He should just punt the little fucker and make a field goal out of him. Now, I'm not talking about the guy dressed as Chucky, I'm talking about Chucky. And I even asked somebody in another forum, which is actually where I got my 30-day ban. I asked why no one has ever just punted Chucky and made a field goal out of him, because he's so small. Like, it's a doll. Now, I get that as Chucky goes on in that body, he becomes more real, like meaning organs, blood, everything else. So I get that there would be weight added eventually. But in the meantime, right now, like early on in his existence, when he first inhabits the doll's body, he's still very much just like cloth, cotton, and everything else. Or I'm sorry, plastic, cotton, cloth, whatever. So it's the ideal time just to kick the hell out of him. And no one's ever done it once in all the series. So I got a 30-day ban for inciting violence against Chucky. So... yeah.
The bad boy of podcasting is back on the show. Oh my god. But you heard him. Brandon got banned on Facebook, so you know what that means. Take a shot.
Take a shot?
Yeah, can you imagine someone's turned our show into a drinking game?
Oh my god. Well, I mean, like, there's another person that's banned on Facebook all the time too, and that's Mark. Our collaborator, and he's he's been on our show before. Mm-hmm. Through like a recorded interview. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is at this point. I just have to resign to the fact that no matter what I do, it'll never be good enough.
Never.
And and no matter how good I act, I have to make amends with the fact that deep down inside, I'm just an asshole.
Not that deep inside.
Yeah, it's pretty much like all over, even at the surface. As someone once described me, I'm an asshole with a heart of gold. I'm like, how does that work? Anyway, and Josh, you just got back from a little vacation. You just got back from the Keys with the kids, with the dad. Mm-hmm. You got to drive across those wonderful bridges in the midst of a torrential downpour and heavy winds.
Yeah. Tropical Storm Elsa was pushing on what would have been our last day in Key West. And, that's the thing. You got all these resorts and hotels and whatnots. And even if there's a tropical storm, hitting that day, they're like, 10 a.m., we need the room. It's like, for who? No, nobody's coming. Just can we chill out here for a little bit while this storm passes? Nah, no, we need the room.
Out of curiosity, as a fellow Florida native, one thing, okay, if you guys have not been in either a hurricane or a blizzard, one thing you always hear on the news during these events is hunker down. How many times did you hear the words hunker down on the news? I'm curious.
What was the question?
How many times while you're on vacation, or not just on vacation, but like since then, as the tropical storm, as whatever, like went through Florida, did you hear the words hunker down? And if so, how often did you hear the words hunker down?
Hunker down. Let's see.
Because the news uses that all the time in like hurricanes and tropical storms.
I would say more times than I can count. I guess it depends on what channel you're watching. Weather channels, like if you're gonna be riding this one out, hunker down. Like, okay, and here we are, like driving across bridges in the middle of it. I will admit, when white knuckling it, across 7 Mile Bridge is not as much fun as you think it would be. But then again, it's a tropical storm. I don't want to downplay, massive storm systems, just because they're tropical storms and not hurricanes. But I mean, come on, it's Florida. We have worse weather on the daily, just from the afternoon, thunder boomers that come in from the sea breeze.
No, yeah. Well, I remember like when Hurricane Matthew went through Jacksonville. Mm-hmm. My roommate, his girlfriend, and their dog at the time decided to try to find shelter elsewhere, which resulted in them driving, oh God, I think like 5 hours before they got to a hotel. Because all the smart people evacuated. I didn't. In fact, I believe I even went for a swim in the pool in the backyard. During one of the heavy days where we had, I'll tell you right now, that the rain in any kind of pool, even a heated pool, the rain that comes down from a hurricane, I swear to God, it just makes that water ice cold. Oh yeah, it was. But I mean, it's like it's a Facebook video. I'll show that on Instagram, not the WADcast, but my personal Instagram. But I heard that so often, like the whole hunker down thing. It just drove me up a damn wall, like just constantly. Oh yeah, hunker down, everybody. Like, oh yeah, if you're writing this one out, don't forget, board up the windows and hunker down. Like, oh, the hurricane's already here. You're telling people to go out and board up their windows.
Mm-hmm.
Don't really think it's a good idea to go out in gale force winds with a 4x4 sheet of plywood. I don't know if anyone's aware of how physics work, but you just need one strong gust of wind to rip that out of your hands, or to just lift you up off the ground like a good 10 feet and throw you across the yard. But good times. And I remember I even got the cops called on me because of me swimming in the pool in the backyard.
Here's the twist. Not that it wasn't your pool.
Yeah. Well, it was communal for anyone that lived in the house. It really came down to me and 2 other people, and the dog. But speaking of cops, that's actually the basis of our show tonight. And I'm very interested in talking about this because you and I had this conversation earlier this week about cops in the media and how they're portrayed. How like right now they don't exactly have a very good rap going for them. But if you go back like a few years, and let's go ahead and just say we haven't gotten to COVID yet.
Mm-hmm.
Let's throw this podcast back in early last year, like say January of 2020.
Yeah.
COVID hasn't hit yet. Theaters are still open. Movies are still being released on the fly. But even then, yeah, I guess really the closest thing we got to like the most recent like big budget uh like I guess cop and criminal kind of film was really I want to say Hobbs and Shaw. I mean, I'm trying to think of anything else that might have come out prior to that. And, you know, like I said, I accidentally closed down the tab that I had all my lists on. But you know, like we went from seeing things like you know, going back to the original Scarface. You go through all these films that have like detective noir kind of films, and you go up through the years. Um, you have good cops, like and like you know, hysterical cops are really touching, endearing moments throughout these films. Early 2000s, we had films like SWAT that came out with Samuel L. Jackson, Colin Farrell. Um, you know, we have you know quite a few films. We had like the other like was it 21 Jump Street reboot that came out, End of Watch, and quite a few of them back in the 80s. We had Beverly Hills Cop. We had a lot of movies that came out over the years, over the decades that really centered around cops. Lethal Weapon. They all centered around cops, whether they're campy, realistic, like funny, whatever. Um, And I know that I know it's got nothing to do with BLM at this point because again we had a pandemic that lasted with some places locked down more than a year, and Hollywood being one of those places where they didn't really start filming until full swing late this past year. But I'll stop there. I'll let you describe to everybody what exactly the topic is in regards to what I was just talking about for tonight, because it was your idea.
It was. It was. Well, like a lot of the ideas that come, for this show, it started with a post on the movie group that we're both a part of. And in that post, somebody had mentioned End of Watch. I haven't seen it. I don't really have any point of reference. I mean, it's been on a watch list for me for a very long time, and well, you know me. I'm not going to completely disavow any movie, regardless. I just sometimes it takes longer for me to get around to it, especially if it involves R-rated content, because I'm kind of particular about what I watch, with and around the kids, so that limits my viewing time. Anyway, that's not really the point of this whole thing. But the post, I wish I had it in front of me, was, I'm guessing it was giving praise to the film End of Watch. Again, haven't seen it, so I can't really make any judgment calls on that. But it also said that it was a movie that couldn't be made today, and that's something that we have talked about before, especially when it comes to sentiment of the public. And
Yeah.
there were a couple of interesting points in the post. And one of them is I just found out that my account is in warning.
And you don't even do anything bad.
I don't. It's weird.
Oh my god. Okay, well, go ahead and finish your point, and then I want to know why you're in a warning.
Well, one of the points that they made was that I'm not really sure about was the idea that Hollywood, Hollywood as a whole, I guess, is using movies and television to turn the public's perception against police and law enforcement. and rather than, you know, jumping onto any kind of bandwagon or jumping into any kind of debate, I just tagged you and I said, "Is this something we should talk about?"
Yeah.
And you know, here we are. So I guess that shows that, yeah, you found it worthy of discussion. I found the post. And then 7 years is a very short time in their perspective of life. It's also the amount of time needed to completely upend a media-driven general public mindset. In light of how this country has been manipulated into anti-law enforcement sentiment, I honestly don't believe Hollywood allowed this movie to be made or at least shown today. A movie that actually portrays real police work in a real way, and minorities as the villain has never really been a staple of Hollywood. But End of Watch didn't seem to let that minor issue bother it. So I got really confused when I read that.
Yeah, it's I was gonna say, like, wasn't Training Day? I don't want to say a realistic depiction, but I mean it was like, I mean, at least they talked about corruption and everything else. But yeah, I don't know. It's the thing is, people are jaded. People are very, and this is from someone that was raised by a member of law enforcement. I was always taught to, you know, respect people in uniforms, but, you know, keep skeptical. You know, I guess keep that watchful eye and everything else, because, and again, coming from a member of law enforcement, our more conservative viewers may disagree, but again, coming from a member of law enforcement, it is, there's no gang in the world like law enforcement. No one has the legal capabilities and the public trust like law enforcement. It's like its own little, I don't want, I hate to say this, but I guess it's like, you know, within certain parameters, it can be its own little mafia, if that makes sense. And it's not to say that this is like something that just happened. It's always been like that. I mean, it's like, it's always been something where, you know, they back each other up, and it's very, very common knowledge that law enforcement does in fact cover their tracks when something goes wrong best they can. You know, these body cams are not for just for their safety. It's like working in a Target where they just install like a new security system. Oh, it's for your own safety. Like, no, it's because the higher ups just simply don't trust them either. There has to be accountability, which, you know, doesn't always work. But coming off of this, because this will turn into a very political thing with some of our listeners, I admire law enforcement. I admire what these guys do, what they put up with. But to say a movie like that would never get made is complete BS. Now, End of Watch, it is a good movie. It is a heart-wrenching movie. It is very hard to watch. But what do you call it? It is one of those movies where you have to, I don't know, like, you have to be ready to watch something that is going to be very difficult. One second. Indiana. Dude, come on. Inside, man. God. Sorry, I'm trying to call my dog in, like, while we're on this WADcast, without detracting away from the show, and my dog is just ignoring me while I'm patting my thigh, while I'm clicking my fingers at him and everything else. So sorry that I just had to shout my dog's name real quick. But yeah, I mean, a movie like that, of course, a movie like that would get made again. I mean, it's not like it was this raunchy ass comedy. It is a depiction of, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? A fictitious depiction of what cops go through in their job, and some of the things that get laid on the line. I mean, I'd have to go back and revisit the post and see who said that would never get made, because we have some really conservative members in that group. And I remember, like, I even said something about another cop movie way back when, and I got into a debate with someone who said that that it's obvious I hate police, which I don't. But, you know, it's, I would encourage anyone to watch this movie. It is a very, very good movie. It's a very sad movie, but it's definitely worth a watch. I will say that I admire how the movie was made because it was told through the movie was pretty much told through body cams and the police officer's dash cam, which is something I have not seen in a movie before. I mean, it's like a found footage movie, but it's not a found footage movie, if that makes sense.
My apologies.
I was wondering where you went.
Just a little bit of a side note. One of the things that I found when I returned from vacation was I had somehow picked up some sort of head cold while I was away, and every once in a while I have to turn off my mic and do a little bit of coughing. So rather than have you guys listen to me hack away, I turn off my mic and let Brandon just kind of ramble.
I don't ramble.
Yeah, don't
I
do
make
that, man,
thought-provoking statements.
I can't laugh right now. It'll stir up another fit. But I sent you the link to the post directly, and so here's the thing. The discussion for tonight is going to be centered specifically around how the media has portrayed law enforcement over the years. If anything's changed in the last, 3 years or so. And the first thing I want to do is try to dispel this notion that there is a Hollywood that will banish movies in, as a whole, right?
Yeah.
And B, have any kind of power to make sure that something is just never seen, barring any of the usual infringements. So, starting with A, Hollywood. I think you can agree with me on this, Brandon. Hollywood is not a thing.
No.
There is not some sort of collective that makes decisions about what will or will not be cool. Believe it or not, generally it's people like you and people like me, not podcasters by any means, but just regular people that kind of speak with their wallets that control what comes out of Hollywood. Why don't we see more of something? Well, because generally it's because it doesn't perform. After all, the biggest movies in the last almost 2 decades have been superhero movies, right?
No,
so what do we get? Tons of superhero movies. Whether they're rushed or whether they're, immaculately planned, the idea is we got to get in on this no matter what the studio is.
Exactly. And that's the thing. I looked at this guy's profile on Facebook, and he is the kind of idiot that I am talking about, where I say, like, his profile is centered around, like, conspiracies and everything else, or just absolute nonsense, like reptilian people. I mean, that says enough about this guy. Like, like guys, it's movies like End of Watch. I'm sure more cop movies will be made. Now, I have a I have a feeling that this guy watched End of Watch and felt like he was actually watching like an actual documentary or like a live action documentary of what these cops went through, not thinking that it's Jake Gyllenhaal and I think it was Michael Pena that was in the
Yeah,
movie.
yeah.
Uh, I think he confused them for real cops and not actors playing in a film.
I kind of got that idea too, but I was like, no, 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 nobody can be like that clueless,
No,
right?
no, people are that dumb. People are that dumb. Very definitely that dumb. Mind you, War of the Worlds, a radio show. Uh, Even after it was made clear that it was just for entertainment purposes and it was not real, people still continued to panic, kill themselves, and all kinds of stuff. I mean, it's people are that dumb. There's even a disclaimer at the end of Cop Watch, I believe, either at the beginning or end of Cop Watch. But if you didn't know it was a, if you did not know it was not a real situation, the fact that it's got two actors, and you talk about superhero movies, two actors from the MCU in it. I mean, just it's one of those deals. And actually, let's go back. Like we're talking about, like this whole tainted ideal of cops and everything else, or law enforcement in general. Now, I would say that the FBI is a form of investigative law enforcement, correct?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay, well, the FBI is prominent in a lot of media, and
Oh
they're
yeah.
very often looked at as like the good guys. Sometimes not so much,
Mm-hmm.
but there's good members of law enforcement in the MCU for crying out loud. And like Iron Man, Iron Man is very centric on the United States military. And a lot of it has to do with Tony Stark's interaction with his best friend, who is a colonel in the United States military. Ant Man, you have that FBI agent, and you also have his ex's husband, who is law enforcement, who is actually a good guy, who believes in him as like even though he's a convicted felon. I mean, there's a lot like, and that's just with the MCU, and these are not like old movies. I'll never like blah blah blah. These are things that are actually real. These are not real, recent. But there are movies in production. Again, I wish I didn't close down the tap. There are movies in production right now that are focused around law enforcement.
Last year we got Bad Boys for Life.
Yeah, no, exactly. Um, was that last year, 2019?
That was last year. It was a pandemic movie.
Oh, okay. But like, these movies continue to get made. These stories continue to be told.
And you know what
Um,
else?
what's up?
We haven't even touched on it. But television.
Oh yeah, half of it's cop shows. And like you said, like people have this conspiracy theory of Hollywood, Hollywood, Hollywood. Like you know what? I will say it. Hollywood is a horrible, horrible, horrible place. The film industry is a greedy industry.
Mm-hmm.
But people think of when people think of Hollywood, especially the more I don't know, like the more let's okay, I'll be briefly political here. The more conservative crowd look at Hollywood as being full of rapists and child molesters, and if you only go so far as to go into like the conspiracy side of things, cannibals and people that drink blood. There's lizard people. There's a whole lot there that people say about Hollywood. I've worked on professional level film sets. One of my friends out here, again, Mark. He is an Emmy award winning audio engineer. This guy has been in the industry for years. One of the sweetest guys I know. His wife, also screenwriter, playwright. Peggy is an amazing human being. I've met a few of their friends who work in the industry as actors or other areas. A few people that I've worked with in the independent sector they're all amazing people. They all have stories to tell. But it's just people have this, I guess, that's what I'm looking for. Outlook. No, stigmatism. That's a stigma. That's what I'm looking for. Stigma. They have this stigma of the idea of Hollywood and the evils therein that simply are not actual concerns. You know, I mean, like, mind you, SWAT is a product of, the television and film industry now. 21 Jump Street, same thing. Very centered around cops, good cops, dumb as hell cops, but still good cops. And let's not forget Ice Cube and Channing Tatum doing his Captain's Daughter dance. One of my favorite scenes in any movie of recent years. But and as you put it, TV. How many cop shows that have just been recycled into new shows, like with the same kind of plots, like, oh well, yeah, the serious detective and the loose cannon partner. I mean, what I will say about Hollywood is that it and the actually entertainment industry as a whole is, yeah, sure, it's out of ideas. That's obvious. It's hard to get like an actual fresh show, which is why I don't watch a lot of TV. You get CSI, you get NCIS, NCIS gives way to, I'm sorry, CSI goes into other branches of CSI, NCIS goes into other branches. But cops are not hated in Hollywood. BLM has had no impact whatsoever on cop movies coming out. And I've seen somebody on the same movie group saying, like, oh, it's because of BLM and everything with George Floyd that we haven't seen a more recent cop movie. Like, well, no, I think it's more because of the pandemic. Because if I'm not mistaken, the whole thing with George Floyd happened right before the shit hit the fan with the pandemic.
Yeah, that's very true. And in fact, the only production that I've heard anything about altering their story after everything that happened was Brooklyn Nine-Nine. They had some stories going on, and they decided, you know what, we're going to rewrite those. And I don't see that necessarily as a problem. They're very self-conscious about how they not only portray themselves, but how they portray, a section of the NYPD.
Yeah.
They felt that maybe it wouldn't be a great time to go for laughs like that.
Yeah.
So they went back to the drawing board for, I think, 4 episodes. And, in fact, that should be starting up, I imagine, fairly soon for the 8th and final season. But if there's anything you can count on, it's... and if anything, if you support law enforcement, this should irritate you more than anything else. The job, the law enforcement occupation, will always be around for studios to take advantage of. There will always be programs, films, TV, whatever, that will have some sort of depiction of cop heroes. Why? Because people will watch it.
Absolutely.
All of those procedurals you mentioned, from the 7 CSIs to the 8 Law and Orders to the 22 NCISs, all of them only get to be where they are if people watch. And you know what's not going to happen? Something especially an entire genre of programming. It's not going to disappear because of something that happened in the world.
Absolutely. I mean, just like law enforcement shows and movies, they have a following. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, even with BLM, with people I know that have gone out to marches and everything else. People that have gone out to marches at Black Lives Matter, they speak very highly of quite a few cop movies. See, people, again, the stigma of people hate cops. People don't hate cops. People hate bad cops. And to say that bad cops don't exist, art does imitate life, and sometimes life imitates art.
Yeah.
But the thing is that there are movies. Again, let's go back to Training Day. Denzel Washington was not a good cop. He was not a good cop at all. Ethan Hawke was a good cop. It was good cop, bad cop, but it was good cop versus bad cop. And not just bad cop, it was Ethan Hawke playing the good cop versus an entire bad unit.
Yeah.
That's what that movie was. Crash. Such an amazing film.
Yeah.
I love that movie. You kidding me? The whole full circle too with it was Matt Dillon, right? Matt Dillon and Jada Pinkett Smith. That opening scene where he's copping a feel and everything else, and she's crying hysterically, and then he ends up being the cop that has to save her, I believe, in the climactic part of the movie. And you see, I'm not making him out to be a good guy. He was a piece of shit in that film. And well, I mean, let's face it, Matt Dillon is a piece of shit in most of his films. He just has that face. I mean, hey, we need a piece of shit for this movie. Get Matt Dillon. But, there's something about Mary, he played a piece of shit. Crash, he played a piece of shit. That movie about the serial killer, I forget the movie, The House that Jack built, I think it's called. It played a psychopath piece of shit. But either way, no. Coming off that though, it's just you have movies that glorifies and demonize cops at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
It keeps coming out. They keep coming out. End of Watch is not the last big cop movie that came out. It's been 11 years. There's been other cop movies. Again, 21 and 22 Jump Street. And they had such a big fan following. They still have such a big fan following that they were trying to find a way to mix two franchises, 21 Jump Street and Men in Black. Because Men in Black is, an intergalactic law enforcement film. Law enforcement is not hated. People need to get that stigma out of their minds. Law enforcement itself is not hated. There's plenty of videos on the internet of cops being real people. And these videos are praised by people on both sides of the political field. Unfortunately, much like COVID-19, everything is politicized.
Yes.
Everything is polarized. Every single thing is picked apart these days. Even people that say that people need to stop getting offended, those very people get offended by things.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to keep having these cop films. They're going to keep coming out. Like you said, there is a fan base. They would not continue to exist. NCIS and CSI, these investigative shows, would not branch out if there was not a fan, a fan base for it. Law and Order has how many different spin-offs?
They just started.
I did not know that. But Law and Order, Brooklyn. Okay, see, I didn't know that. But Law and Order, Brooklyn Nine-Nine. It's a multiple award-winning show. It's centered around the damn NYPD, for Christ's sake. I mean, there's plenty of these stories to be told, whether it's in comedy format or dramatic format. They continue to persist, and the people responsible for Brooklyn Nine-Nine quite a few of them are very liberal people who respect police, like police officers and law enforcement.
Yeah. You gonna tell me
And
Terry
those people
Crews doesn't
work
love
very.
cops?
What's that?
You said you're gonna tell me Terry Crews doesn't love cops?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Like, I mean, it's like, and Terry Crews is a very liberal person. Andy Samberg is a very liberal-minded person, and yet these people are running like these guys are like they're like two of the big stars of this show. They're the big name, like two of the big names in the show. These these people that think Hollywood, like Hollywood is bad. It's like they're the same people that say, "Oh, I get it, Orange Man bad." Hollywood is in the same boat. You have shitty people in Hollywood. Yes, you have Harvey Weinstein. Throw his ass into the prison. Using his power to get what he wants from women, it's disgusting. Unfortunately, he's not the only person. And it's not just a left or right thing. It's not just a Republican or Democrat thing. Politics do not. Well, let me rephrase this. Sick individuals or people with certain beliefs do not fall into any one specific infrastructure of the political field. They're all over the place. They're all beliefs. They're all religions. They're all colors. They're all, they're all political, like beliefs and ideals. Hollywood is not the enemy. There's just shitty people in every industry that you can think of. That's what it comes down to. I remember like there was a thing about Straight Outta Compton. Oh, well, look how it depicted the cops. Like, yeah. Have you ever been to Compton? Well, no. Then shut the hell up. Were you in Compton in the 90s? Well, no. Then shut the hell up. Were you? No, but I'm not bitching about it.
I think now would be a good time to talk about the history of law enforcement as it's depicted in the media. And
okay.
it has a very long history. I mean, ever since media has been around, no matter what the form. I mean, after all, Shakespeare wrote about the Royal Guard, right?
Yep.
But in our discussion, we're just going to talk about the motion pictures and whatnot, and trying to keep it kind of current. And speaking of current, we can go all the way back to the early days of the silent era when there was this group called the Keystone Cops. Right?
I was going to say, you're going to have to educate a few people on that one. I learned about that like way back when, but you have to educate a few people with that so they know what you're talking about.
Oh, well, I sometimes I just assume everybody knows that everything that I do, and I'm always the last, to kind of hear about things. So, for those unaware of who the Keystone Cops are, it was a series of silent films about bumbling policemen. It wasn't so much these guys are bad. It's just it was a very slapsticky Three Stooges, Laurel and Hardy type of comedy. People falling off of things and people getting smacked, and it was a whole thing at the time. But the point is, this is the earliest depiction of, well, not the earliest depiction of police, but definitely one of the earliest popular depictions of police in the United States, and it kind of made them look dumb.
Oh, yeah.
So, to say that suddenly, quote-unquote, Hollywood is making
mistreating
cops look bad, it's like, no, it's kind of been that way since, like, 1912.
Oh yeah.
Over 100 years of, cop looking dumb.
And besides, I mean, like, yeah, just like slight sidestep here. We're going back to Brooklyn Nine-Nine with this point. I know people that are very, very, very conservative sets that believe Hollywood is evil. And I know people personally who personally believe that Hollywood is making cops look bad now. Tell me that no one remembers the whole scene during the lineup. I'm sorry, the whole lineup scene in Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and it's made its round on Facebook, where he has them sing "I Want It That Way" by the Backstreet Boys, and he gets so into it that he completely forgets that this is a police lineup, and he's looking for the man that mugged this woman.
No. It ends with, and I'm just being a pedant here, but just because it's
Whatever.
so funny. It's that's him. That's the man that murdered my brother. And he's like, oh yeah.
That's right. That's right. No, whatever. It's been like, I mean, I don't watch the show very often. I just kind of saw that clip like months ago, but still, it's like, I mean, it's. I remember seeing that like in the show while I was trying to get into it on Hulu. But it's one of those deals where I mean, it it was a moment that like even the people that I know that are die hard uh, blue line supporters thought it was hysterical. Like I don't think that scene exactly makes cops look good. It was just for comedic purposes.
Mm-hmm.
Hell, 21 Jump Street does not make cops look good. Makes them look really stupid. But it was funny.
May I continue my history lesson now, sir?
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Talk about
I'm
stupid
gonna
cops.
take a little sip here.
Take a sip.
Now,
Now swallow.
I did.
Yeah, you did. Go ahead.
The reason why these depictions were commonplace is whew, take over for a second.
Uh, the reason these are commonplace is some unspecified reason that Josh is making a point about that I don't know, but I'm taking over for him. So yeah, I I don't want to sidestep his history lesson again. So we're just going to sit here in silence, have a moment for Josh's throat of observation and the heavy load he must have just swallowed. It's not for everyone. You have to work those muscles. You have to, open up your throat. You have to be ready to swallow that load of whatever liquid it was that he just drank. And yes, I am throwing some very, 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 very thick innuendos out there. No pun intended.
Yeah, I'm sure it wasn't. So anyway,
All right, go ahead.
I'm reading this from Vox.com. In an article that was put together by Constance Grady. Very insightful. I'm going to go ahead and throw the link on in the chat there if anybody wants to.
Justin says, "Cut the balls."
So
he was drinking a liquid that did not come from any kind of phallical object, Justin. You dirty, dirty person. Okay.
at the time, police were not considered to be all that great because, and mind you, this is not coming from any kind of modern political viewpoint.
Yeah.
It says the ridiculous police of 1910s pop culture didn't come out of nowhere. The police of the late 19th and early 20th centuries were widely understood to be a corrupt gang, and not without reason. The infamous Lexow Commission of the 1890s, which ran more than 10,000 pages long, found that the police extorted $10 million from the public each year in New York State alone, and that they regularly harassed the citizenry rather than trying to protect them. And it started a 30-year-long effort of police reform, and actually is what helped Theodore Roosevelt kind of get noticed. But this, I mean, sounds familiar, doesn't it?
A little bit.
So it wasn't until the 50s, almost 40 years later, where the hero cop actually became a thing with Dragnet.
Yeah.
And at that point, that is when the police basically kind of started getting a hand in producing TV shows. I'm not saying they were producers per se, but they were
Consulting.
Consulting. That's when the consulting really started to really help out with what a procedural should be. And
Oh yeah, but like that's also when like even like some of the more comedic aspects of police work came into play, like with Car 54. Where are you?
Yeah.
So I mean. But yeah, no, you're right. Like I would say Dragnet is the show that kicked off, a lot of the more serious aspects of what goes into police work with good police.
And it started a trend that honestly has not stopped yet, because after that there was all sorts of cop shows. You mentioned Car 54, Where Are You? And then Chips, Columbo, Hawaii Five-0, Street Blues, Law and Order. It just became a big thing. In fact, you weren't anybody unless you were on some sort of cop show, whether it was a group show or you're a grizzled detective that solves cases, or it's a buddy cop tandem that makes wacky jokes and solves crimes.
Yeah, I mean, like even like I mean, and this isn't just in the show. I mean, this goes back to the comic books, but like the original Batman with Adam West and Burt Ward. You had the Gotham City Police Department was a staple in that show with working next to Batman. I mean, and they were good cops. They were stupid as hell. Can I add this though? We're talking about cops, Justin. I see that you're listening, buddy. So A, want to say hi. Thank you for chiming in. B, I also noticed that we don't really have many listeners. I blame myself because I cannot promote the show. People don't usually jump over from Instagram. They kind of like jump in on, like Facebook, whatever. And, I've got 24 days before I can start promoting the show again on Facebook. But the thing is that just as a side note, we want to talk about good cops versus bad cops in in the media. Anyone that's from Jacksonville knows that quite a few cops in certain areas of Duval County, Florida, are kind of just like they're really bad with their police work. Not really good. Stop getting banned. Well, Justin, I'm going to issue an apology to Chucky and make sure everyone knows that I do not condone violence against possessed dolls now. So, but no, like going back to police work, can I just say one thing with this? The Batman movie in the 1960s that came out had the worst police work I've ever seen in my life and the worst detective work I've ever seen in my life. I like anyone that has seen that movie, please tell me you guys remember the scene where they're trying to figure out who exactly was involved in the movie. And I'm sorry, not just a movie, but like in general, in the plot with like who the bad guy was. And they go on this long rant. I still remember this rant. I couldn't stop laughing because it just sounded like it came right. It sounds like this is a movie that Jacksonville Beach Police Department uses for their training. It was Batman. It was pretty fishy what happened to me at sea out there. And one of the guys chimes in. So you mean like where there could be a fish, there could be a penguin, and that shark was pulling my leg. The Joker, and it happened out at sea. See, C for Catwoman. And then in comes what's his face, the Irish officer. I can't remember his name. Jumps in. He says, "It all adds up to a suspicious riddle. Riddle, riddle, the Riddler." Like, I mean, like, what if none of them were involved? Like, you're just gonna go beat their heads in because she just, I don't know. It happened at sea. C for Catwoman. I mean, come on. Police work.
Some days you just can't get rid of a bomb.
I know. I'm going to have to go back and watch that movie. In fact, oh God, if I did not, since I'm talking through the podcast on my phone, oh God, I'm going to have to. I'd have to go browsing through my Facebook to find this, and I would get kicked out of the podcast for doing it. I have a picture somewhere of the scene where Bruce Wayne is kidnapped, and he's flying on the back of like this umbrella with one of the pirates. And I have to praise the actor that played this pirate. He did such a great job. He looked like he was really into the role. But it's just a very, very interesting picture. Because while the pirate's looking on, he's pretty much like holding Bruce Wayne's hand, like almost like in his crotch. So people with my mentality, I couldn't stop laughing.
And you're supposed to be the mature one.
I'm far from it.
We're boned.
Oh, God. See if I do it this way. That way I don't have to be gone from the show and I won't get kicked out.
So I'll just go on talking then. The point is, as the article mentions, certain police organizations are having a problem with bringing in civil rights consultants and activists to kind of get their 2 cents in as to how certain things go down on TV shows. In fact, there was one in particular who I'm not going to bring up in particular that made the statement of it's once again Hollywood trying to downplay or rather see head cold because words are tough when you can't think. When it's Hollywood trying to make police look bad, essentially, and change the opinion of the public, when in fact, and I know this is going to come as a surprise to a lot of people, even though it shouldn't, the writers, the producers, and the studios are reflecting the public's opinion of basically everything rather than influencing it.
Exactly. And that's the thing. Like Hollywood, like I mean, see, Hollywood itself does not take sides. Actors definitely, and honestly, actors they get a little too political for me at times. But what Hollywood does, these shows and movies are not written by the actors. They are written by people who take note of their surroundings, and those people build stories around what they see and what they hear or what they've experienced. So I mean, you can't blame Hollywood for these movies that are coming out, or like these shows that you disagree with, or like things that are not coming out. It all comes down to the writers. And I will say this, going from the writers, like for like film scripts, I will say this: that is where Hollywood has a say, and it's like the producers, and they have to think, okay, is this going to be good to release right now? You're not going to have a topic that's going to be a very sensitive matter. Like we're not going to have like a Bill Cosby as a hero or a good guy movie coming out anytime soon. Guarantee it.
What was that one movie about? It's basically a rendition of the most dangerous game.
The Pest.
No, no. Love that movie. John Leguizamo was the treasure. That's not the one I'm talking about. Sue was talking about it when she was on the show.
Oh, The Hunt.
Yes,
But even The
that
Hunt. Go ahead.
that was it. That was not a situation of the Hollywood gods or however people want to call them saying anything. It was a calculated decision to go, okay, if we release this now, there could be some blowback. So we'll wait a little bit. Did it prevent it from being released? No, but it
Mm-mm.
kind of did give it time to a have certain situations ease down, and b get people to realize, oh, the thing that everyone says that it was going to be is not what it was going to be. That sounds familiar.
Yeah, all the time. And honestly, like The Hunt, I thought the movie was brilliant. Like I don't like. I mean, my DVD and Blu-ray collection, as it is right now, is a little over 2,000. Like my library, like my physical library of movies, is around like 2,000 different. Well, I want to say probably like some of them are like just movies I ended up with, or just I ended up with that were like multiple movies in one box. So it's probably higher than that. But the thing is like The Hunt. I instantly went out and bought that movie, like just because of how bad everyone was talking about it. I wanted to go see. I wanted to see this movie, and you know what? Once I actually heard what it was about, I had to see it because I'm going through what it was about right now. It is all about a misunderstanding through social media. That's the basis of the movie. The way people take social media way too seriously, and how, once again, polarized the two political fields are right now. It's just instant, like, yo, you're a conservative or you're a Republican. I hate you because I'm a liberal or I'm a Democrat. Like, I mean, that was the point of that movie. And I remember seeing someone say, it's like, well, at least a conservative came out on top. Like, well, actually, no, she was not a conservative. She wasn't really anything. She was an ex soldier that was dealing with some serious PTSD that was just caught up in the middle of this absolute stupid situation and scenario. I mean, I thought it was a brilliant film. I recommend anyone. I don't care if you worship the your Messiah that is no longer in office, or if you support the guy that, like the last guy, can barely seem to really string along a coherent sentence. I really urge you guys to go watch this movie. You might actually enjoy it. It is really, really, really well done. But yeah, I mean, like you were saying, though, this is like it wasn't a good time for that movie to come out. As brilliant as it was, it just simply was not a good time. In which case, I would argue it was the perfect time if people can lose their egos and their need to be right and just watch a movie. Take their own advice and stop being offended. Just go watch it. Give it a chance.
I intend on giving it a shot as soon as I can, because it is
Did
one
I
of those
spoil
things that. What's that?
Did I feel like I spoiled the movie for you?
No, I wasn't listening.
Oh, good.
So yeah, Hollywood. If you want to call it Hollywood, fine. We'll stick with your little notion that there's a quote unquote Hollywood that controls all media, and
Yeah.
apparently Howard Stern is at the top of that ladder, I guess.
Are you serious?
Well, he's the king of all media, right?
Oh God. But I mean, it's like it's not just. I mean, like let me, as someone that works and has worked quite a bit in the entertainment industry. Let me tell you right now, it is not just Hollywood. You have Hollywood. Hollywood's just a city, guys. That's what Hollywood is. It is a city where a lot of studios exist and a lot of actors live. But you know what? So is Atlanta, Georgia, and so is New York, New York,
Toronto.
Austin, Texas, for Christ's sake. I mean, there's plenty of cities in the United States where there are film studios, where there are famous producers. And guess what? Some of these guys don't even live in the United States. Europe is or even in Canada. There's quite a few of them that even live over in Europe. In Africa, in Australia, New Zealand. It's worldwide, guys. It's not just Hollywood. Hollywood is that is the boogeyman to a lot of people. Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
Hollywood is a city, people. Only reason why people think of Hollywood is they think of Hollywood Hill with that sign. That's what they think of. They don't know anything else about it unless you've ever lived out here. I'm telling you, it's not like that. So I urge anyone to get some kind of volunteer work in on the film set for one day and see all the different mindsets of people making these things happen. Join some filmmaking forums, join some screenwriter forums. You'd be surprised at the difference in ideals that you'll see. Even Sue. I love Sue. Sue is absolutely great. We need to get her back on the show at some point, but even with Sue, I'm sure that her and Mark, again, Mark is a good friend of mine. I'm sure that they would very drastically disagree on quite a few things. And they're both very active in the industry in different areas. Everything these days is polarized, but you know what? It's not even just these days, guys. It has been like that, as Josh said, since the dawn of filmmaking. Different levels of support in different areas and beliefs. It's just how it is. Back when white actors doing blackface to portray black people, there were people that were severely disgusted by that very act, and not just black people. I'm talking about white people and in the film industry. Gone with the Wind. An actress winning an Academy Award and not being able to attend because she was just black. That was Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
That right there, that was Hollywood. But a lot of members of Hollywood, outside of the elites in the industry, strongly disagreed with that. What's her name? Judy Garland. Being told she was too fat and constantly being talked down to, and actually being physically slapped in the face to get her to cry in Wizard of Oz when she was 14, 15, 16, somewhere. She was a kid.
Something like that, yeah.
That was Hollywood, guys.
Until
Hollywood is
every other moment. Oh, if you're having problems, we can replace you easily.
Yep. See, Hollywood is again a city. It is more the producers, and again, they are not. They do not just live in Hollywood. Producers are the ones that do a lot of these gigs where it is just either really thoughtful or really vile behavior. You want to talk about the bad guys? You know, Hollywood is Hollywood. It is a city where studios exist and where actors live. Producers are the ones. You have producers that like Judd Apatow, amazing person, does a lot of charity work, treats his actors with a lot of respect. He carries his actors onto other projects. Adam Sandler, great guy. Harvey Weinstein, not so much. You're talking about like G.I. Joe versus Cobra with those two comparisons. I mean, Hollywood itself is a war zone, believe it or not. So,
An ideological one?
huh?
An ideological war zone?
Pretty much. And Charlie Shuck, welcome to the show, buddy. And yeah, Charlie says, "Oh my God, I never heard about Judy Garland. That's insane. And now I don't know how I can watch Wizard of Oz anymore." I mean, like, and that's the thing. Like, I mean, Wizard of Oz. I mean, Judy Garland. I blame Wizard of Oz and what she dealt with while working on that set for what stuck with her throughout her career and what led to her eventual demise. That girl was tortured while she was on set, and she was a damn kid.
Hey, Charlie, what's up?
Like she was, I mean, that girl was viciously abused, and she's not the only one. Like you have, I mean, and it's not even just like Hollywood itself. You have parents of these kids. Macaulay Culkin, for crying out loud. What his parents did, like he had to emancipate himself. Or what's her Shirley Temple? And I forget which kid. There was a child actor. Um, I believe it was actually one of the members of the like the Little Rascals crowd.
Alfalfa.
Is that who it was?
Mm-hmm.
Whose parents spent all of his money, millions of dollars that he made. His parents spent that money and said that he was you know, like he's their child, so they don't see why he should keep any of that money. So Hollywood guys, come off that stigma. It gets old. It's redundant. It's repetitive. And yeah, Drew Barrymore. Yeah, like Sean, you're absolutely right. Drew Barrymore is a great example. You know what? She has this daytime TV show now that I cannot stand. But you know what? It was so sad. There was this one episode where Steven Spielberg came on the show, and as her co-host was introducing him, she didn't even mention his name at all. But she had talked about how he got her gig working with E.T. and blah blah blah, and like her big breakout role. And the co-host says, "Do you know who I'm talking about?" And Drew Barrymore actually, even, she is in her like late 40s now. Drew Barrymore broke down like a little child because, in her own words, the first person that ever cared about her. How fucking sad is that? That right there is not Hollywood. So I know I'm coming off the topic of like the cops thing, but it's just like whenever I hear like how Hollywood, big bad, blah blah blah, it's exhausting. It's tiring. It's not Hollywood. It is what is going to make money right now, and this is a call from producers. Right now, guess what? Horror is the big thing. Horror is always going to make money. Dramas are always a crapshoot. Comedies are always a crapshoot. Cop films are always a crapshoot. Criminal, like I guess criminal capers. Well, they have their own little whatever. Um, but horror films are like that's the big seller. And right now, looking at this, there are 5 different police films that are in pre-production right now. So this guy on Facebook, this Neil whatever, and I'm just going to call him out, Neil and Movie Addiction. The guy's a moron. Uh, End of Watch was a good movie. It was a terrific film. I love how they shot it. It was heart wrenching. It was difficult to watch. Just because you have not seen another film come out like End of Watch does not mean a cop film is not going to come out. And if your profile is filled with things about lizard people, then I'm sorry, you're an idiot. I need you to smack yourself in the head with a tack hammer and see if you can knock something back in place. But and no, Sean, like horror films are definitely sellers. There was a huge audience for it. Oh shit! There we go. Sorry, 1 second. 1 second. There we go. Sorry, knocked my actually pulled my headphones off. Yeah, there is a huge audience for horror films. That's why they continue to sell the way they sell.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Blumhouse. I think that production studio is a very, very, very hit or miss studio. Sorry, Jason Blum puts out most of the time very mediocre things. But you know, cop films, they're going to keep coming out, guys. And cops, unfortunately, the few cops that are absolute horrible people are the ones that decide what kind of shows come out or what kind of movies come out and how cops are depicted in those shows and movies. Just like good cops do the same thing. Unfortunately, you know, right before COVID, we had the whole George Floyd thing, and I'm not going to get into that whole situation. But Derek Chauvin didn't exactly help cops look good. And then COVID hit, and so, you know, the things that were set to be released or movies that were set to be produced and filmed kind of got put off and either just now wrapped or whatever. Now, I get it. You guys really want to see some cop films. That's great. You know, I like to see some more cop films, but I understand how you feel. I should already own a copy of Ghostbusters Afterlife, but guess what? COVID. You just gotta wait.
Yeah.
You think you're the only person looking forward to shit? How do you think it makes me feel like I can buy Ghostbusters cereal and Stay Puft marshmallows, which were awesome, but I can't watch the movie that they were promoting until, well, like I think November this year. And if it does not come out the day before my birthday like it's supposed to, there is no God.
So I think it's time to start wrapping things up, Mr. B. Randon.
Okay. Oh,
so I think the gist of what we've been saying comes down to this. When it comes to Hollywood or when it comes to law enforcement, the idea of a gross generalization is the most egregious thing that can happen no matter what side politically you fall on.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, whether it's quote-unquote Hollywood or quote-unquote the police, we have to look at situations, we have to look at stories, and we have to look at officers as individuals.
Yep.
There are bastard politicians, there are bastard producers, there are bastard cops.
Yes, and let me just elaborate on that. Most people, I'm going to quote the very wise Dr. Cox from Scrubs on this. Most people are bastard-coded bastards with bastard filling.
Absolutely true.
So, I'll let you continue. Sorry, it's my favorite quote in the world.
So when it comes to these situations where cops are not doing the correct thing, it's our job as the citizens, no matter, again, what side politically you lean or fall face first into. It's our duties to call them out and to demand that we get better, that we deserve better protectors because we, as a society, have given them authority with a badge and authority with a gun, and we expect them to utilize those powers in a responsible and civil way. But
Absolutely.
the same thing can also be said to the producers of the various films and television shows, where they have a responsibility, a duty to protect their actors and protect their crews and not be flaming dillweeds that take advantage of people that can't defend themselves.
Fleming dillweeds.
We deserve better, and we have to hold accountable for anybody that for anybody that doesn't meet the standard, the
Absolutely.
bare minimum standard of treating other people with respect. It should not be a political thing. When you call out a bad cop, you should not be considered uh, a terrorist, an anti-police, because you want bad cops to be held accountable.
Absolutely.
This should be a message that everybody can get behind. And if that comes from uh, writers and producers reflecting these feelings in our movies and television, then instead of saying what is their political motivation, we should say, what am I supposed to be learning from this? How does it affect
Absolutely.
real life? And what can we do to change these perceptions?
And you
But
know what?
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, like, while we talk about the polarization of like good versus bad cop and holding them accountable and everything else, I have had someone jump on me calling me a cop hater. And
Cop
again,
hater.
mind you, coming from my background, how I was raised and everything else, I know quite a few cops. I know quite a few cops. Fortunately, most of the cops I know are really, really good people. Very good people. But on the same token, these very good cops I know don't talk about their personal lives with their coworkers unless they're very close friends with them, and they're usually close friends of people that are like-minded like them. Um, but for those of you that are curious about my standpoint on the police department, and Justin, I don't know if you're still on the show, but you were there when this happened. We have a friend of ours, Justin and I. We have a very, very good friend of ours. Close, might as well be like a brother of ours. That was very unjustly locked up, and it wasn't just the police; it was a whole legal system that did this to him. Pretty much locked his ass up over a BS charge, and a whole bunch of Jacksonville Beach's finest are the ones that were involved. Invaded the garage, beat the shit out of him, put him in the hospital, and then he ended up spending about a year and a half, I think, a year and a half in prison before he got released, and all charges were eventually dropped because it just never should have happened. On the same token, this very good friend of ours, his brother-in-law is a member of JSO, and he's rough around the edges, but he is a very, 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 very good man. So unfortunately, like with any field, you have people. Sorry, there's like a kid willing back here, and like for some reason they stay in the front yard and they, I don't know. This is why I don't have kids. But like there's this polarization, and it's there for a reason. All stereotypes are based on some truth. I hate to say it, but that is very real. They are based on some reality on some level. the stereotypical reaction that people get, like when they think of, like, I guess, cop films and like good cops, bad cops, all that stuff. Um, Again, art imitates life always in media. You see it in all kinds of shows, medical shows, legal shows, cop shows. It's everywhere. If there's a story to be told, it is told. But it's told when it's a good time to tell it. So just want to say it because, I know we have an occasional listener that goes back and listens to these podcasts that I get messages from once in a while asking what my problem is with certain things, and not like attacking, but just like actually a legitimate debate, which I always enjoy. So I had to put that out there just to, just to say it. But yeah, that's all I got.
Well then, that seems to wrap things up for the week. Brandon, stuff.
Okay. Well, right now, not that I ever get on my Facebook anyway, but not that you can really follow me for the next month on Facebook, even if I did. But you can find me on Instagram under bjacksman82. But you can also find our page, the WADcast, on both Facebook and Instagram. Those are updated because Josh can still update them. Update Facebook. I update Instagram. But both of which, Instagram.com/the WADcast. Same with Facebook. It's Facebook.com/the WADcast. You'll find both pages because they are both they both have like that black picture with a white banner. I think one we still have the rainbow banner for Gay Pride Month from last month. Probably change that back or upgrade it with the new logo. But yeah, in that logo it says the WADcast on it. So just go ahead and give us a like, follow us on Instagram. If you follow us, we'll follow you back. It's only fair. If I find out that you unfollowed us, then I will unfollow you because I'm petty. But that's where you can find us. Josh, what about you?
Well, as always, you can find us on the Facebook, like you said. That's where you're watching this right now. If you're joining us live, the WADcast Facebook page and Simbicore Studios Facebook page. You can find us on Twitter, the WADcast Pod. You can find us anywhere fine podcasts are sold. So if you want to download it or just listen to it at your own leisure, rather than joining us here each and every Friday night at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, you can go to Spotify, Apple, Google, blah, 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 blah. It's everywhere. But if you're doing that, don't forget to rate, review, subscribe. That way, we can move up in the algorithms when people look up podcasts that they want to, listen to about Hollyweird and all the stuff that goes on there as far as writing, acting, and directing. You can follow me on Twitter at SkitComic. I'm not a prolific tweeter, but, every once in a while I go live with Twitch or with another podcast, and you can find updates there. Or you just follow at Simbicore Studios, another place where things get thrown up, vomited out into the world. That's what I feel like I do sometimes. Just open up my brain and just spew all over the place. Charlie has a comment here. You want to?
Oh, yeah. JSO's corrupt as fuck. Getting some extra F-bombs in there for you. Haha. But it's okay. I just read your comment out loud, so I just added another F-bomb to the show, so don't worry.
By the way, for those of you that don't know who Charlie is, I'll explain this in a nutshell. He's a very, very close and dear friend of mine. And that picture you see here on the stream is one he actually took. So, yeah, he's, whether he knows it or not, he's the official photographer for the show now.
God. Well, at least we have one.
How I wrangle people into their roles. Kind of like how I got you into this role.
Well, no, you and I just kind of talked about, doing something. I think we had this whole conversation about Doctor Strange. And oh, yeah, we should talk about this on the show. And you're like, well, we just talked about it. Yeah, you're right. And then we made that god-awful, I made that god-awful send-off that sounded funny in just conversation, not so much in delivery. Doesn't help that I was also drinking profusely when we did our pilot. This is why I no longer drink while I'm doing the podcast unless it's like maybe like a beer. There's no more like, beers, shots, and everything else, and then sign on and do the show. Because, yeah.
So is it time for the final thought of the day?
You know what? Let me do the final thought today.
Oh, God. I mean, okay.
I will do the final thought because A, I've not done it, and B, you know what? I will release a statement for this, but two things. First off...
Hold on. I got to start the music for the folks at home because this is the last time they're going to be hearing from me. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and I'll catch you next week. I'm going to leave you all in the capable hands of Brandon and this week's final thought.
Don't worry. Last time I gave the final thought, everybody, I was pretty annihilated with some happy adult fun juice in my system. So this time I am not, as I work in a little bit. But as Josh always says, the only thing standing in your way of achieving everything that you want to do is simply you. There's absolutely no greater chains that anyone can ever wear other than that they put on themselves when it comes to their goals. If you have an idea, if you believe in something, if you support something, write about it. You're going to get backlash. It's going to happen. You're going to get criticized. It will be brutal. But if you have your own experience that you want to write about, if you have an experience that you know of that you want to write about, if you have an idea that you want to put into production and you can make it yourself, then make it. Again, the only person that will ever stand in your own way, as Josh always said, is definitely you. When it comes to the polarization that we've covered in the show tonight, again, there will be backlash. People will disagree with your message. But it's your message. Tell it the way that you see fit, and don't let anyone tell you that it's not good enough or that it shouldn't be made. So, that's all I've got. Oh, and my last thing, I do not condone violence against possessed dolls. If you see Chucky, he's running at you with a knife, I want you to give that little guy a hug and show him all the love that he definitely, obviously needs. With that said, I'm Brandon. That was Josh. This was the WADcast. And I hope you guys have a fantastic night and a great weekend. The end.